Well, finally, this storm is getting out of the way. It's taken long enough, but it is exiting. It's still a few remnants winding down in the northeast and around the Great Lakes, however. We do have winter storm warnings and blizzard warnings continuing out in the west, particularly in California, Nevada, into Arizona. And that includes outside in the mountains of Los Angeles to the northeast. And they're going to get some really big rains. That's as big a story for Southern California, if not bigger, is the rainfall amounts, which will be up to 5 inches in some places. And that storm system will eventually get kicked out to the northeast, and that will be the next weather maker for the northeastern part of the United States next week. All of that and more on tonight's Joe and Joe Weather Show, which, of course, is brought to you by
Omni True Value
Hardware of West
Hardware.
Babylon, New York, 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon, to be specific. And they are getting ready for spring because, the month has got only, today's the 23rd, 5 days left.
5 days left, and meteorological winter is over in 5 days.
That's right. And
Yes.
they've got salt and sand. They got salt just in case, but they got mulch, topsoil, and sand, and everything else you need to make sure your home is immaculately landscaped this coming spring. 631-756-1125. And, of course, we know that they have the best prices in town, and the website is
OmniTrueValue.com.
Yeah.
Joe?
So, of course, everybody's already looking ahead to late Monday night into Tuesday morning because maybe the snow drought will be broken. And you know what I say to that?
Don't hold your breath.
Exactly. Do not hold your breath on this, folks, because I can see it already happening. For my subscribers on my subscription page on Patreon, patreon.com/meteorologist Joe Cioffi, in case you'd like to know. And, knowing me, never wasting an opportunity for a shameless self-promotion. I wrote a piece this afternoon regarding the setup for Monday and what's going on and what's happening. I made it very clear that this is, considering the way the winter has gone and how a lot of these storms have behaved, don't be surprised if this thing winds up disappearing off the map. And as soon as I clicked the button, the 18Z GFS started its run, and I looked at it and I said, there it is. It's starting already. So, look, I looked at I really kind of focused on the 12Z because I'm now starting to stick with your rule on the idea that not to pay too much attention to the in-between run. The GFS at 12, both the GFS and European would argue for a bit of a front end thump. I thought the GFS would cut the snow off somewhere around Route 78 in New Jersey. And include Long Island. The European would argue maybe a little bit further north than that. Maybe Route 80 would be the base case there. I thought southern and southeastern New England may still wind up doing quite well either way. But I'm really, Joe, I'm just really nervous about the idea that there's just going to be a little bit, it's going to be a little bit further to the north. Is going to be just a little bit less in the way of cold air, and that's a real risk that it could once again wind up, certainly from New York City south and southwest. It could be mostly rain.
Yes, and some folks on the chat board are just ignoring next Monday and jumping straight to March the 4th.
And something? On March the 4th, I don't know if any of you guys looked at the European, which takes a low straight up the west.
To the west.
Straight up the west side of the Appalachians. Because you know what? On today's runs, when I looked at the 500 and I was looking hemispherically at the 500, the block is much weaker than what was being forecast yesterday. So don't be shocked if you shouldn't be shocked. You should expect the fact that both those systems will wind up being, for many folks, again, particularly for Monday anyway, certainly from New York City south and southwest, I mean, it could very well wind up being mostly rain.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So it's still much too early in the game, even for the Monday event. What are Monday now? The Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, 4 days out.
There's still room for stuff, for some movement here.
Still some wiggle room here.
Oh,
wiggle room.
I actually, to be fair, I mean, just sort of the argue in the other direction. I looked at the I was looking at the 850, and the 850 actually is the 5,000 foot level, roughly 4,800 feet. I was surprised at how cold it was on the GFS, because the zero never really gets north of New York City until almost Tuesday morning, and by that time the bulk of it is all over with. It would just end as a little bit of rain. You'd have a thump of snow, and it would end as some rain, and that for a couple hours, and that would be the end of it. I was a little bit surprised at how cold that level was, but again, this could still wind up being, less in the way of cold air and bleeding down on Monday. And you're going to wind up with a warmer solution. I could just see it, because that's the whole winter's done this. Why is it going to be any different this time around?
Why indeed? It's you as some like to say, the trend is your friend. That's been the trend. Maybe it's not your friend, maybe it's your enemy, but until I see something different, until I see some kind of a pattern change, why not just continue to say it's going to be the same old thing? Same old, same old.
And when you run through the long range, you can focus your attention on what goes on in the northwestern part of Canada. Every single shortwave that drops into northwest Canada wants to drop straight down the west coast. And I don't that nothing, not much of that changes. Not much of that changes in the next 2 weeks. I think tomorrow, which we're not going to do a show tomorrow, the models better come in and be colder, because if they're not, I think there's a real chance that we're done. I mean, as far as any kind of snow chance is concerned, because if even this blocky pattern is just not impressing me at all.
And we had a Gomer pile this morning in Beantown, second surprise snow of the week in Boston, and the models never gave a clue that it was going to happen. And, Dr. Judah Cohen likes to look at something like this and say, has the polar vortex disruption finally turned the tide? I don't know.
Oh, and meanwhile, here's another thing. Speaking of surprises, and this is another danger when you try to figure out warm fronts in the late winter and spring. You get burned in both directions, because the models were way too warm, too far north and east. I mean, they had 70-degree readings up in central New Jersey. Didn't get out of the 40s along the shore, and even the inland highs. Trenton only got to 54. I think some of the forecasts were up more at around 67 or 68, and low 70s in South Jersey. Now, it did managed to get to mid 60s, and then there's the odd 70-degree reading all the way down in Millville, but Atlantic City International Airport only got to 57. And the other thing was the fact that it was mid and upper 40s for Long Island for highs. It was more like upper 30s and low 40s all day long. And also further north in terms of high temperatures across Massachusetts, it's been below freezing all day long. Boston just kind of nudged up to 34 briefly, and there's another little shield of precip that's going to be moving through during tonight, so they may get some more ice, maybe some snow and some freezing rain and sleet that'll work its way through as this storm system goes through its last gasp.
Well, we were talking about this yesterday and the day before, how cold air, especially a shallow layer of cold air, tends to be denser, heavier, and tends to be further south. So the models over all of these years, these short-term models guidance have failed to pick up on that.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why sometimes a man-machine mix works a lot better than just simply going with the machine. If I were forecasting, for example, for Freehold, New Jersey, or Trenton, or someplace Tom's River, I never would have, I don't think, have gone as warm as what the model guidance was suggesting. Again, simply because the cold air tends to be heavier and tends to sink further to the south. I think they did get to like 75 degrees in Washington and close to 70 in Philly, but that was about it. That was about as far north as the mild air or the warm air could get.
Yeah, Baltimore went out. This is right in the harbor was 63. Okay, but BWI got to 79, and Washington D.C. College Park got to 79. Washington Reagan National got to 81, and it was upper 70s and low 80s in Virginia. We got an 85 here. Where's the 85? The 85 is in James River, Virginia. In North Carolina, in eastern North Carolina, it was all mid 80s. South Carolina, all mid 80s. I had clouds here all day, so I only got to 69.
Poor baby.
Yes. Now, you asked the question about Atlanta yesterday. I didn't realize it, but Atlanta yesterday hit 81. Which not only broke the record for the date, Joe, but that is the all-time high for the month of February.
Wow.
81.
I would have thought it would have been higher. I know that just a few years ago at Central Park, 78, the all-time record high in the month of February at Central Park. So you would figure that a place like Atlanta, much further south, would have, quite a bit more right. to go on. Maybe like 87, 88. So I'm amazed you're only a few degrees warmer, or Atlanta's only a few degrees warmer than what New York has been able to manage in February.
Yeah, it's most of the records here probably this time of year are right around the upper 70s to around 80 or so. And again, the 81 yesterday was the all-time high for Atlanta. The only difference is, Joe, when Central Park hit 78 on that date a few years ago, we had a blizzard the next day, and it was 19 that morning, if you remember.
Yes, I do.
Yes,
I do. We were working together, weren't we?
Yes, we were, and I don't have any danger of. I didn't wake up to a blizzard this morning after yesterday's all-time high here in Atlanta. But I will say this, it just occurred to me. I will say this, that for the month of March, now last year we had snow on March 13th, okay, as I recall. I had about an inch of snow on March 13th. So I'm almost tempted, except that you're where you are in Putnam Valley. You probably will get some snow on Monday, even if it's just at the start. And if you're lucky, maybe you get a bit more. But I part of me wants to bet the fact that I'll probably see snow this month more times than you see snow up your way.
Amazing. But I will need at least 2 or 3 inches for me to get the gumption to open the garage door, pull out the car, and roll out the snowblower, who's still awaiting its very first appearance of this season, incredibly, this late in the season. So that'll be for Monday. If it's only about an inch of snow and then we get sleet and ice on top, I ain't using the snowblower. It's useless to use it for something as little as that. But hey, what can I say about this winter? It's been crazy.
Ken Musillo hitting super chat tonight. Thank you, Kenny, and welcome to everybody on the chat board. And those of you who are not on the chat board, welcome to the Joe and Joe Weather Show. We're on Monday through Thursdays at 7:35, Sundays at 11 a.m. But this is a good time to mention that this coming Sunday we will not be on at 11 a.m., but more than likely we will be on at 7 p.m. So we're going to have a Sunday evening Joe and Joe Weather Show. And that's probably a good thing anyway, because
That places us 8 hours closer to the quote event on Monday, or
right.
late Monday night.
Plus, we'll have all the dayside guidance. So we'll have
right.
the whole European. We'll have the new European. We'll have the 18Z GFS. We'll have every model we can look at to try and justify to put accumulations into the forecast. Meanwhile, where it snows almost continuously, we have winter storm warnings up for a good chunk of the state of California, particularly in the mountains. Blizzard warnings are also up for parts of the Sierra Nevadas and also for the southern mountains north and east of Los Angeles and to the northeast of San Diego. Believe it or not, I was looking in the winter storm. I was looking at the forecast for one of the mountains along the coastal range just north of San Francisco. I don't remember, I pulled it up. The elevation on it was only 850 feet, and they were going for a couple of feet of snow, even as low as 850 feet, which sort of surprised me. And then I checked out the forecast of some of the mountains down in Southern California, and I mean, we're talking, they've got 4 to 5 feet in the forecast when you add up all the time periods. Every time period basically says, 18 to 24, 12 to 18. Exactly. Yeah, it's just crazy. We still have some residual winter weather advisories up north of I-90 in upstate New York into the Adirondacks, and also in southern Vermont and southern New Hampshire, across Massachusetts and northern Connecticut. Most of the temperatures here are at or below freezing, and we do have some precip on the radar that's moving through. Some residual winter storm warnings and winter weather advisories on the upper peninsula of Michigan. And the light blue there from Minnesota back over through Montana and into western Washington, we have wind and chill advisories that are in effect there. And David Fuller just hit the tip jar. Thank you, David. He says, so if next Saturday doesn't turn out to be anything, let's just toss the towel. What you think? I look forward to the show every night. Thank you, David. In my mind, I've already chucked the towel in. Here's our satellite loop, and you can still see some residual clouds. Although skies have looked like they've cleared out across Pennsylvania and in parts of southwest Jersey down into Virginia and West Virginia. I still got some high clouds here over me. It poured in the mountains, in some places in the mountains today. And you see the southwest stream here with some moisture. And here, look right off the west coast, we could see that swirl. I'm going to see if I can, let me pull up that west coast satellite so we can take a look at this. Pacific, what do I want? The Pacific coast. We'll take the Pacific coast and we'll do the lightning one. Let's see if this is, oh yeah. This is a good shot. So there's the low. I'll load up to 60 frames and we'll make a nice little loop out of this. Very, very well defined there off the coast of Washington and Oregon. And which way is it moving? It's moving south.
That's quite a stem winder.
It is.
And
look at all that Pacific moisture just streaming into Northern California right now,
right
into that cold into the cold air. And by the way, if you look in the eastern part of California near the Nevada state line, you can see all the snow cover in the Sierra Nevadas because at the beginning of the loop, those clouds, what you think are clouds, they're not moving. That's all the snow cover that's out there.
That's pretty amazing. Today was the day when the drought monitor map is updated, and from what I can see, well, there's still some areas that have severe drought, like places like up in Kansas.
You want to share it?
Sure, I'd love to share it.
Then go ahead, share it.
Hang on for a moment.
I switch you anyway, so. Go. La 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 la.
And there you go.
There you go.
East of the Mississippi, there's hardly any drought at all, except down in the Florida Peninsula, they have, I guess the yellow is corresponding to abnormally dry. Let me just do this here. Yeah. So abnormally dry in Florida, but most everywhere else where it's white, there's nothing. There's no drought problems anywhere. And the only place really, again, that is showing signs of extreme drought, actually more like exceptional drought, would be portions of Kansas, western and southern Kansas, and also in portions of Nebraska. But most everywhere else, it's either white or just, the yellow, indicating abnormally dry, maybe moderate drought in the orange. But certainly nothing like what we saw when we began to move into the winter season, when it seemed like this entire area out here, out west, was blanketed in red or deep red. And now you can see some big changes that have occurred. I mean, yeah, all right, abnormally dry along the coast, but elsewhere, moderate drought. Again, a lot better than what it was, back in August, September, October. I remember Arizona was one big area of red, extreme drought or exceptional drought. They have now, with all of the rain this winter season, have dropped off to no drought at all in some places. I'm surprised, Joe, that for all the rain that has fallen across, especially northern and north central California, that they're still indicating either moderate or even, in some cases, severe drought. It's going to take a little bit more water. Maybe this next punch that's coming their way in the next few days with up to 5 inches just might put a big dent in that between now and when the map is revised next week.
You wonder how much runs off, because they were in extreme drought for a while. You got to think the ground is like concrete. Must take it must take quite a while for that water to just kind of soak in. All that rain coming all at once. I would think most of it would wound up probably running off and going into the rivers.
Well, I don't know. I see that they're still concerned about the water levels at Lake Mead, that they're saying that they're running very low. And I'm surprised at that because, again, so much moisture has fallen over the western United States. But a lot of that, as you said, is runoff especially for Lake Mead. But I don't know. It may take a long while before that drought is finally reduced to no drought in parts of California and Nevada.
Adam Lowe makes I think it's a great point. He said this winter has been an epic bust for the meteorologists, where they said it would be warm and where they said it was going to be warm and bone dry. Okay, winter was at its worst in the West, and particularly in the Southwestern California, and in places where they said the winter was going to be brutal, winter just failed to show up. Well, aside from the the forecast, look, and you, everybody that watches this show on a regular basis knows this, okay? And that is, and I hope that come late next summer that everybody remembers this, because of the fact that you forecast below normal temperatures and above normal snowfall in the Northeast because it gets people to click on your site. The people who do it. That's the only reason. There's no meteorology involved. They make it up, okay? Because it gets clicks. And I'm sorry, but that's the truth, okay? Broken clocks are right twice a day. One of these years they're going to say it and it's going to happen. Okay, they get no credit when that occurs. Not from me anyway. So here's the radar, and we do have snow right now moving across Vermont, New Hampshire, and into Maine. And you can see the precip that's a little bit on the southern edge of that. It almost looks like a frontal line that's coming through across New York State. Approaching the I-90-87 intersect. Now that's going to cross into southern Vermont, New Hampshire, and Massachusetts and northern Connecticut in the next 4 or 5 hours. So that's going to go on by. And with temperatures at or below freezing, that's going to probably put down an additional layer of ice in some places. So that goes out. It'll finally take this whole thing offshore. We've got residual snows around the Great Lakes, but most of this is now very light. And meanwhile, in the west, we're starting to see the moisture beginning to move in a big way into northern California and southwestern Oregon, and also down into the Sierra Nevadas, and in all the mountain ranges here, even near the coast, we're seeing snow coming down, which they've got frost and freeze watches up around San Francisco, and you don't see that too often either. Okay, WPC 7-day precip amounts in the east, a half to 3/4 of an inch, a little bit higher up in New England. So this takes us through next Thursday night. And also 1.5 inch amounts from northeastern Kansas up into Wisconsin, with this western storm that's coming in when it gets kicked eastward is going to bring rain to the central plains, and then eventually some snow as it moves its way up closer to the Great Lakes. But in the west, I mean, that's impressive precip in Southern California there. That's on the order anywhere from 2.5 to as much as 5 or 6 inches. That's going to fall in and around LA and all the way down into San Diego. And then, of course, up the coastal ranges, that's all snow. 2 and 3 inch plus liquid amounts. That's going to be all snow. Also in the Sierra Nevadas. I went back to the probability maps that we usually have. I was, after the show last night, it's like, you know what, I don't like these. It's too much work for me. I have to refresh them and all the rest of it. But here's the probability of at least 2 inches, which is taking up a large portion of the west. I'll go to the probability for 12, and you see where in the next 72 hours, where we have, of course, the usual suspects in the Sierra Nevadas, but again, also near the coastal ranges and also down into Southern California. Meanwhile, in the east, gee, here's a shocker. There's no place that shows a probability for at least 12, except for that little brown area, which means 1 to 5% for coastal Maine. So let's go to the probability of at least 2, and this takes us through Sunday evening. And there you go. Maine, the 50% line goes from about Portland, Maine to south central New Hampshire to central Vermont into the Adirondacks, and also up in the upper peninsula of Michigan. And Joseph, here we go on the long range. WPC, Joe, has a 50 to 70% chance for at least a few inches northwest New Jersey to your front yard, southern Connecticut north of I-95, and points northward. And they've got the 30 to 50% line in northern New Jersey down to, I would say probably Somerset County to just north of Trenton. And Long Island is in 10 to 30. Central New Jersey down to southern New Jersey is in 10 to 30. So is southern Pennsylvania. Would you like to opine on this?
I'll opine only to the effect that, and I've been saying this for a long time now, that I wish that the models went no further out than 84 hours, which is what the North American model does. North American model 12Z today only went out as far as the end of the day on Sunday. So we're going to need another day. Let's say by tomorrow at this time. Of course, we're not going to be on tomorrow. When I'd like to see what the NAM is going to be doing with this impending system for later Monday night, and Tuesday.
Well, I'm just going to warn you. I am
Yes.
just going to warn you, because in all of these systems that we've seen in the last 2 or 3 weeks, the NAM loves to make dark blue snow for areas that wind up having all rain. So just be careful.
Well,
just be careful with it, because at least if it does that, at least find another model that kind of supports it. Okay.
Yes.
If it's doing it by itself, and there isn't another global model that matches up with it, I would be I would be suspicious.
Well, the thing that I want to point out here is that we really will not have a solid or a good handle on what's going to happen until beginning later tomorrow and tomorrow night. And you're right, not just the NAM. I'm using the NAM as an example because it only goes out to 84 hours. But once we get to tomorrow night and into Saturday, and especially Sunday, I would hope, a lot of the global models will be honing in on whether or not we're going to see a lot of snow, a lot of sleet, or even just a lot of rain. I can also tell you that the European has been by far the warmest of most of the global models. And while I don't think that that's going to be entirely true, you balance it out a little bit by the colder temperatures on the GFS. But I still think that overall, the storm on Monday, late Monday and Monday night, is going to be more in terms of an ice as opposed to a snow maker. And ultimately, eventually, it's all going to go to rain before it ends early on Tuesday. So I guess you could say I'm from Missouri. You're going to have to show me.
I will say that if you're north of Route 84 and in Connecticut, it might go further south than that, particularly as you go east. And I think if you're in interior southeastern New England, I think you have a shot of doing of doing okay with this. Let's put it that way, as far as snow is concerned. Okay, and I'll get into that in just a moment. Steve Lapointe hitting super chat, Joe, reminding everybody to smash the like button because Joe and I like when you like the show. So when you
smash it.
Smash it. So we can get to 100 likes. It makes us very happy. He says, Tom Hannity Contino, cause of your complaining, you will get rain. Oh, he's saying to Tom Hannity Contino, because you're complaining, you will get rain over your house. And that, I think, would not be a big surprise if that winds up happening. And Leon Probitsky also hitting super chat, saying a big thank you. Thank you, Leon. Most appreciated, as always. And yeah, let's take a look at what the models du jour are saying. I left the 12Z run of the GFS up for everybody to enjoy. So here we are. This is actually 84 hours, so let me just roll back. So this is tonight. You can see what's going on in the west. Now that's the western system is going to be the one that's going to come to the east early next week. We do have the residual low from the storm of the last few days in southeastern Michigan. So I'm sorry, southwestern Michigan. That's moving right along. Right now, it's actually centered in upstate New York. That was earlier today when it was in Michigan. It's just sort of making a center jump here, goes offshore. You could see the last of that precip over southern New England between now and, say, 1 or 2 a.m. Once it gets there. It hasn't gotten there yet, but it should probably be out by 2 or 3 a.m. And then we get a shot of cold air that's gonna last for a whole day and a half. Saturday will be the coldest. We'll be waking up to teens and 20s in the morning and probably not much above the low and mid 30s in the afternoon. We still on the same page with that?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. The California storm drops southward. You see it there offshore, the low center, and all that blue that spreads southeastward across Southern California, and those yellow patches there indicating very heavy rains that are going to be occurring. This is during Saturday into Saturday evening. Then that low gets ejected out to the east. Now, there's no real cold air that's going to be left in the plains, so it's all rain there in Kansas and in Nebraska, Iowa. Not until the low gets up into northern Illinois that you start to get to some ice in northern Wisconsin and points northward. And then it becomes all snow once the low goes into Michigan, because now you start to see some cold air that gets pulled in from a high. And it's not a strong high here, a 1021-ish high in Quebec. It's marginal cold air. It's colder aloft, actually, than it probably will be at the lower levels. And then that low is going to run into that high and basically redevelop off the New Jersey coast the problem here, Joe, is first of all, this low gets down to a 975 in northwest Illinois. I mean, this is a really wrapped up low that winds up going there. You would want to see something not quite as deep and maybe a little bit further south. Maybe if it was in central Illinois, moving across, say, Indiana and into Ohio, instead of being so far north into the Great Lakes. This being this far north, this is why I think that there's enough of that high that if you're in interior southern and southeastern New England, you may wind up getting saved from the changeover if this verifies. And
saved.
Well, yes, saved. The snow lovers will be saved.
I am not looking upon that as a safe or save in that case. I hate to say it, folks, and now we're almost into March, and we've blown most of the winter already. And I honestly, at this point in time, if it doesn't snow a flake on my property here in Putnam County for the rest of what's left of the winter season, I am not going to be upset at all. There you go.
All this work to get to a point where we could break the record for the least amount of snow ever in New York City. We've done the bulk of the work now. We only have to get through another month or so, unless it's something freaky that shows up in April. It would be almost a shame to get a snow at this late date.
It would be sad to have so little snow at Central Park to date. And then when the season is over and when you look back upon this season, or years from now, I'm not talking about next year, the year after, 2 or 3 years, but let's say 10 or 20 years from now, somebody's going to be doing a survey on snow amounts in New York City at Central Park. They'll run across the winter of 2022, 2023, and they'll say, oh, well, it was a little bit below normal. They got like 13 and a half inches in that winter season.
Right.
And where did they get the 13 and a half inches from? Right. From an incredible snowstorm that hit sometime either in March or, as I said yesterday,
in early April.
As I was apologizing to my snowblower, early April. Yeah, it could happen too. Why not late April? You really want to make this a freaky winter? How about, in a winter that saw no snow or hardly any snow in the New York metropolitan area, here on this 28th day of April, we get a 13-inch snow. It's crazy. It seems impossible or improbable, but really, after all we've seen so far, why not?
Why not? Frank Scalera hitting super chat. Thank you, Frank. So here's like as I said, this is the GFS, and you see what it does, and there's a sharp cutoff into where the southern edge of the accumulating snow is. It was right around Route 78. If this were to verify exactly, you probably could wind up with 3 to 6 hours of a decent burst of snow out of this, if this were the case. But notice, just south and west of New York City, Philadelphia, southern Pennsylvania, southern New Jersey, Maryland, nothing. It's all rain for those areas. So you're really threading a very, very fine needle here in order to pull this off. And then out this goes. And then, of course, you've got another system that's going to be moving out of the northern plains to bring a cold front through here sometime late next week. And then the front stalls and you get a wave and there's some cold air behind it. And the GFS has been doing this over and over again now for about 6 days. So it's almost time for it to either jump ship and shift to the Europeans' view, or just make the darn thing disappear altogether. Now, I'm going to use tropical tidbits, and then I'll switch over to Pivotal just to show you the difference between the two. But because this one is not going to tell you where it's rain and where it's snow, but this low on the European, the primary low that goes into Michigan actually holds on for way too long. I mean, look at that; it's still there up in north of Lake Ontario. By Tuesday afternoon. So that's one negative in all of this. It does have a solid burst of precip, but it's a little bit warmer. As you said, Joe, it's a little bit further to the north. I would rather see the 540 thickness where the 546 thickness is, unfortunately, but that is not the case. Then that goes out. And then with the next thing, for the end of next week, It does the same idea that the GFS does, except for the fact that instead of taking one system through with a second wave, it builds the ridge again up in the East Coast, and you take a 978 low, Joe, a 978 low in southwest Ohio that becomes a 74 and then a 71 over Buffalo. I mean, it's a really wrapped up storm here. I mean, this would be a soaking rain with eventually a screaming south wind. Oh, God.
A sou'easter.
Yeah.
A sou'easter. And I've said this before. I will say it again. I'll say it until the final date I do a forecast. Tom Contino, Joe Ray, are you buying the European on March the 4th? Tom, give up on March the 4th. Just give up. Throw in the towel. I mean, if you want a great snowstorm, as I've said over and over again, you don't need a huge monster storm. What you need more than anything else is a big dome of cold high pressure. That's what you want. And all you need is a modest little area of low pressure wave skirting underneath that cold high. Bang! Before you can blink an eye, you'll have 6 or 8 inches of snow. Right. All right? And that'll make you all happy. When you get these monsters like Joe just mentioned, that's going to be screaming through the Ohio Valley and into western New York, you don't want that. That's horrible if you're a snow lover, because what that means is you're going to draw up all that warm air. Temperatures are going to be flying through the 40s into the 50s. Rain could be heavy. Now, what you want is to live, let's say, in Ann Arbor, Michigan, where they'll probably be just to the left of the storm track, and they'll probably have blizzard conditions with that storm. But we're in the wrong spot for that. So if that happens on March the 4th, well, I'll pass you a handkerchief or a crying piece of tissue paper, Tom.
I'm going to go back to I got the European here from yesterday. Yeah, look, here's the big difference. When we were talking about the block yesterday, if you looked at the European here, it builds that upper high over Greenland, and basically spreads higher pressures all across eastern Canada from north to south. Okay, this was yesterday. Now today, roughly the same time frame. Not nearly what was being shown, as strong as what was being shown. Initially, it does show you think the blocking high is starting to build there. This is later next week, and then it just goes. It's done. It's all overwhelmed by all this cyclonic flow and this deep trough in the west. You see the ridging up the East Coast. I mean, you can't have that. If you want a storm, you cannot have a ridge pushing all the way up the East Coast and all the way up into the Canadian Maritimes and on up into Labrador. You need some kind of an upper load up there to just kind of to suppress that ridge. It's not there. Just right. Talking about the system on the 4th. And the GFS is a little bit different. And it's not to say it can't be right. It's nailed a few things a number of times over the European during this winter. The GFS does have a stronger blocky signal there going into next weekend. Okay, so it gives you some hope because now you don't see this big ridge that builds up into Canada. And that's the big difference between the two models. And I'm going to tell you right now, the way the winter's going, this will be the time that the GFS will be wrong and that the European will be right and shows less of a blocky signal up there in the North Atlantic. Write it down. I'm telling you. And by the way, in the longer range, what happens? Going out to 348, 360, 384. Okay, I mean, it's not on this run. It's not terrible. Let's go back to the GFS. It's actually okay in terms of the upper air around March 10th and 11th. I mean, now we're really starting to grasp at straws here. This is the old run. The old run actually had a colder look to it toward the end of the forecast period, but Jesus, Joe, it's March 11th at this point. Really. I mean, how much? I feel like I'm just like grasping at straw after straw after straw. That's sort of where we're at here. Uh, anyway,
That's at the 133rd anniversary of the blizzard of '88.
and the maps today look nothing like that. So, anyhow, do you have Briller Jeopardy or do I?
I do believe I have
You have
Briller
it?
Jeopardy. And
Okay, we got our 100 likes, which is really nice. Thank you.
And Chuck Cardillo on the chat board points out, we're talking about snow in April. He says last year, this is Chuck now, we had 14 inches of snow for the third week of April in the Western Catskills. So something to hang your hat on and hopes on.
If you want to, if you want to take a trip to the Western Catskills, yeah.
Yes, yes.
Park a lawn chair at 3,000 feet, right, Chuck? Chuck loves snow. Doesn't like ice, though, but Chuck does love snow.
So let's see. What do we have here? Here is from Mr. Briller. As soon as it comes up, you ever hit the thing and you wait for the message? It's just blank white.
Takes forever sometimes. Facebook, a messenger.
I closed it and I'm opening it up again. Here it is. Bing, bing. There it is. Briller Jeopardy. Average low. Low. How low can you go? Average low temperature in February. So for the entire month of February, what is the average low temperature for these 5 cities? Starting with Chicago.
Chicago, the average low,
in
February, I will say 20. It's got to be a little lower than New York. I'll say 22.
Well, guess what, Joe?
What?
Joe Lopresti hit it right on the nose, coming right out of the box. 23. David Fuller had 23 also.
Well, I had 22, which is not bad.
And Suzanne DeAngelis had 24, so she missed it the same amount that you did by 1. That's pretty damn good.
That is. Okay, yes. Next one.
Number 2 is Beantown, Boston.
Beantown, Boston. I will say 21.
Okay.
I will say 21. Anybody hitting it on the nose yet?
Hold on. Tom Contino on the chat board. We're going to interrupt this Briller Jeopardy. Maybe we'll do this after Briller Jeopardy. Tom Contino says Hudson Valley weather.
Yeah, I saw. He wants the European ensembles. I'm trying to find it. Go ahead.
Yes.
Keep going with this. I'll get the ensembles in the meantime.
All right. Leon Probitsky, our good friend, hit it on the nose. Boston's average low temperature in the month of February, 25 degrees. Da-da.
Da-da.
Da-da. Now, how about Motown? How about the Motor City, Detroit? Average low temperature in February.
I'll say 21.
And you hit it right on the nose, Joe. You're not even giving anybody. You're not giving anybody a chance. 21.
21.
I was 21 once.
I'm not sure. By the way, I'm not sure what I'm going to glean from this. It's in terms of the European. All right, I got the ensembles. Never mind. Okay, go ahead, Joe.
Dallas.
Oh,
Dallas.
God. I'll say 41.
Ooh, Tom Seaver's number. And I might add a damn good guess.
Okay, it's a good guess. Has anybody got it closer than me?
Not yet. Oh, wait a minute. I just saw somebody with something who hit it on the nose, and that was Joe Z. Not Joe R, not Joe C, but Joe Z. Hit it on the nose with 42.
Oh, okay. So I was close. I'm coming close tonight.
Yes. Last one. Buffalo. Oh, you say Buffalo?
Buffalo.
For years I've called it Buffalo.
I will say. I'll say 19.
Oh. the man is hot tonight.
Was that it?
But it was very close, but unfortunately for you, both David Fuller and Luis Orizio hit it right on the nose at 20. And so did Adam Lowe.
All right.
So there you
are. So that was the last one, correct?
That was the last one.
All right. So I've got the European ensemble here. And all right, so this is the surface plots. All those little red numbers, those are where the various members are plotting the surface lows. And, again, okay, but you got this wrapped up primary. I mean, it's just too wrapped up and too far north. This is for the first system. And then, of course, as you go further out in time, to me, it becomes less and less useful. But look where it has it. This is Thursday and Friday and Saturday. I mean, it's got lows all over the place, but the mean low position is in eastern Michigan. I mean, come on. Like that doesn't mean that it's going to be right. But again, it's probably the bigger issue is the fact that the European is nowhere near as blocky as the GFS is. The GFS, you have a chance. If you've got a stronger block up in the North Atlantic that builds into eastern Canada, and you don't get this ridge to fly up all the way up the East Coast for late next week, then yes, then I think you have it. Then you got a shot. But it bothers me that the models are, when it comes to blocking, particularly when it comes to North Atlantic blocking, the GFS likes to overdo the blocking signal in its long range. It happens over and over and over again, and I just will say that maybe this is another one of those times where the blocky signal is overdone.
And Hudson Valley Weather is asking now, can you pull up the 18Z Euro ensemble on tropical tidbits?
I just did.
I got it up on Weather Bell. But
I just did it off tropical tidbits.
Yeah. Well, maybe this is running behind. I don't know.
Okay. It probably is running behind. It shouldn't be, but it may be. Let me just check the stream settings. Yeah, it's on low latency, so the messages should only be like a second or two behind.
Scott, New York. No. Scott NYC says prizes will be boxes of Rice-A-Roni.
Hudson Valley Weather, that was the 12Z ensemble that I showed. The 18Z ensemble on tropical tidbits is not out for the European. It's not only not out yet, but it only goes out to 144 hours, so I don't think it'll go out. It's not going to go out far enough. But I probably will be sitting here if I did see it to go out beyond 144 hours. I'll say the same thing again. It's if there's no block, you've got no chance. Not in this type of setup. You need every. It's the only way you're going to get enough low-level cold air is if you have that block in position to produce a stronger high, a stronger high in eastern Canada somewhere to bleed down some cold air. Otherwise, it ain't happening. Is Philadelphia breaking records in terms of no snow? Asked Keith James. I believe so. I don't know that they've even had measurable snow in Philadelphia. I don't know if they have. I lost track. I got to ask Tony Gigi because he follows what goes on in Philadelphia more than I do on a day-to-day basis. You gonna check?
Let me just quickly bring up from our friends over at the Climate Prediction Center.
The Climate Prediction Center. Here we go. What do they have?
And they have almost the entire Northeast, save for Westchester south of 287. New York and Long Island are out of this, but everywhere else in the Northeast, a slight, let me underscore that word again, a slight, are you watching, Tom Contino? A slight chance for a heavy snowfall from March 3rd through March 4th. And that is what they are saying. Tomorrow night, it may be gone, but right for this moment, they still are looking at the potential of a heavy snowfall for a rather large area of the northeastern United States and New England for the 3rd and 4th of March.
I put myself right over the box that says slight. I covered it perfectly.
Well, at least somebody out there is trying to make Tom happy, and the snow lovers happy.
Yeah, I think. Where'd you go, Joe?
What do you mean? Where did I go?
I don't see you on the screen here.
Well, I just unshared the map.
Well, why aren't you there? Hold on. Let me bring you
Where
back.
are where am I?
Yeah,
Now that we ran into this problem yesterday. We're at the end of the show. Don't
no,
try
no,
to.
no. We crashed yesterday. That was a whole different game. Uh, we didn't crash tonight. So I think I should get. No, for some reason I don't have. I lost you now, and I can't bring you back. I can't bring your face back up. They can hear you, but I can't. They can't see you.
Good.
All
That's
right. Well,
good enough.
all right. Well,
That's good enough.
let's hold on. Let me make myself as because I'm big everywhere. Let's make myself as big as possible and say nighty night, everybody. We're gonna see you Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern time. Okay. See you Sunday, and pray that the block is stronger if you're a snow lover.
Yeah.
Say good night, Joe.
Good night, Joe.